verse, two important words nullify the impersonalist theory that everything is God. Here Kardama Muni says, O personality of Godhead, you alone, you are alone, but you have various energies. The example of the spider is very significant also. Spider is an individual living entity, and by its energy it creates a cobweb and plays on it. And whenever it likes, it winds up the cobweb, thus ending the play. And the cobweb is manufactured by the saliva of the spider. The spider does not become impersonal. Similarly, the creation and manifestation of the material or spiritual energy does not render the creator impersonal. Here the very prayer suggests that God is sentient and can hear the prayers and fulfill the desires of the devotee. Therefore is Satchidananda Vigraha the form of bliss, knowledge and eternity. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So, Kardama Muni is speaking out before the Lord whatever he has understood about Lord, the glories of the Lord. The Lord has appeared before him, and one after the other he is describing the glories of the Lord, especially the majestic aspects of the Lord, the Aishwarya aspects of the Lord. That entire, the last verse was how the Kala, the time, is spinning around the axis of Brahman, and how every living entity is under that influence of the Kala Chakra. And here he says that, my dear Lord, you alone create the universes. You are the creator of the universes, and then you are the one who maintains them and one who winds them up whenever you want. And this is all carried out by your second energy called Yogamaya. And the example is given just as a spider creates a cobweb by its own energy and again winds it up. So Prabhupada says in the purport, very significant point, that here it is, even though it is, the Lord is described here as Advitiya, without a second, Advitiya Atman, without a second, but yet he has got energies which he controls, and he creates these universes. So two important words nullify impersonalist theory that everything is God. That's what Prabhupada says. So the famous or the most popular philosophy among the so-called Jnanis is that God is Nirguna, and then that Nirguna Brahman, without identity, without individuality, becomes this material universes, becomes these jivas, becomes everything. And that is it. He becomes and unbecomes. When he becomes all these things, they do not recognize that the Lord has a personality. They say everything is energy, one primordial energy, Nirguna Brahman. Something is existing, eternally existing. At least they agree that. The Buddhists don't say nothing, there's nothing like eternal, it's an illusion. The impersonalist Mayavadis, one step they come, that beyond all this, even if all this dissolution happens, beyond this there is impersonal Nirguna Brahman. Nirguna means you cannot qualify, you cannot describe. Is it an energy? No, you cannot describe. Because if you say energy, then has to be a person who created the energy. So it is neither energetic nor energy. Any guna you say, no, it is not that guna, because it is called Nirguna Brahman. That Nirguna Brahman has become everything. So ultimately there is no eternal God, there is no eternal soul, individuality. Whereas the Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about an individual, a supreme personality of Godhead, whom Kardama Muni is having darshan and is praising him. He doesn't say that you are part of this three guna. He looks at the Lord and he says that you are transcendental to all these three modes of material nature. And you are transcendental to the universe. Even though you have created so many universes and so many universes are maintained and they are withdrawn, still, after withdrawing, you still exist. And the example is given of the spider. The spider brings forth saliva from its mouth and creates a cobweb. And then the cob and the spider moves inside all that. And when it wants, it withdraws everything. Spider still there. Only saliva has come. The saliva is the energy of the spider. So the cobweb is created out of the energy of the spider. In the same way, there is a personality, supreme personality of Godhead. These Mayavadis are not able to grasp this truth because they do not ultimately accept the descending process of knowledge. They are jnanis, in the sense they get trapped in their own jnanic process. The jnanic process, they say, how can God be a person? How can absolute truth be a person? Because as per their empirical knowledge, everywhere they have seen person means limited. Individuality means limited. That is what you can experience in the material world. That is a fact. It's a factual observation. That everything is just like the will of the wisp. All personal characteristics, personal aspects. For instance, a person dies. He all vanished. Where is he? He doesn't exist anymore. His feelings doesn't exist anymore. So they say, how can God be a person? So this is the trap that they fall into. They cannot just conceive that, what are you talking? Absolute truth is a person. How can it be a person? Person means concrete, individuality. How can it be? But here it is described that he is an individual Advitiya Atman. He is an individuality who is becoming everything, and yet he is separate. So the idea that God becomes everything and that is God is wrong. That is God's energy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said God's energy is simultaneously one and different from God. Because how can an energy be separate from God in that sense? It cannot be separate from God because it is God coming from God's body, transcendental body. So this is also transcendental body, but functionally it may act in the material world. Everything that you see, everything is transcendental. It is coming from God's body. Because every energy is the Lord's. There is no difference between the energy and the energetic. But energetic exists and energy exists eternally. This is the point. There is eternal existence of the energetic and the energy. And in a sample we see in the material world, everywhere we see there is a tiny person and tiny his energies. Every one of us are personalities and we have energy around us. We have powers, different energies. This body itself is a power that we have. The mind is a power that we have. These are all energies. We are able to move around in this material world and act in this material world. These are all my karmic energies. It is given to me. I am not the owner, but it is given to me. But in the case of the Lord, He has also got energies around Him. Entire existence is energy around Him. Why? Because He is not an ordinary person. This is called Vishnu Tattva. We have to understand the sample man and as a sample man, as a sample God, and then we can understand God. So Lord has unlimited, 1 minus 1 is equal to 1. That aspect is not understood by the impersonalist. They understand, they say it is impersonal, 1 minus impersonal 1 is 1. They say. The Lord is one, and from Him so many energies are coming, still He remains the same. He is an inexhaustible source of everything. It's a glory of a person. 1 minus 1 is equal to 1 is a glory of a person. Because if I take out my hand won't be there. This is not whereas the Lord, one entire form comes out of Him, He still remains that. Advaitam Achyudam Anadim Ananta Rupam. The Lord has got unlimited forms, unlimited names, unlimited activities, unlimited universes, unlimited parts and parcels. It is inconceivable. Vishnu, the glories of Vishnu are inconceivable. Glories of Vishnu Tattva are inconceivable, inexhaustible for a living entity to understand. And there it ends. One who understands that, he moves next to next level. Let me understand his sweetness aspect. Let me understand his madhurya aspect. Let me understand his sweet, loving relationship. How Lord Narayana is a most loving person. Suhrutam Sarvabhutanam. How he is a friend of all living entities. How he is giving an opportunity for all living entities to fulfill their desires, respecting their freedom to do what they want. So, from once a devotee understands that the Lord is inconceivable, achintya, His Shaktis are achintya, He is a achintya Vyakti. A person, an ordinary person, you be with him for a few days, you can understand him fully, more or less. What is his mind, what is his nature, what is his desire, what is his activities, everything. You can make a list and put in a database. But the Lord, His glories cannot be enumerated at all. That enumeration, that tasting of the Lord's unlimited glories, that is called Shantarasa. It is a devotional rasa. Glorification of the Lord. It's a devotional rasa. Feeling the glories of the Lord is a devotional rasa. Then one would want to serve such a Lord. Engage in devotion service, such a wonderful Lord. Because you also understand that one of His glories is that we are all Him. Yet He is separate. There cannot be anything other than Him. Advitiya, there cannot be anything second. There cannot be anything non-Krishna in existence. We are all part Krishna. Krishna is whole Krishna. We are all part Krishna. There is nothing other than Krishna. Even material energy is part Krishna. Everything is Krishna. In terms of substance, everything is Krishna. In terms of function, yes, His supreme will dominates. He is everything and He is above everything. Being above everything, His will dominates for His Leela, for His pastime. The world exists, the existence is existing for Him, Anandamayo Bhyasat. It is for Krishna's pleasure. That is why when we understand it is for Krishna's pleasure, it is not an easy statement to understand. We will think of an ordinary man and ordinary man's pleasure like that, we think it is Krishna's pleasure. Because in our idea, we have no perception of Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu Tattva is a different kind of a personality. So when we talk about He is a central enjoyer of everything, we feel it's, okay, how can, how we are all not enjoyers, only He is the only enjoyer. What is His existence? We are Him. We enjoy when He enjoys us. That is the meaning of Anandamaya Abhyasat. The Lord has a relationship with each and every living entity, and each and every living entity can contribute towards the total pleasure, Anandamaya Abhyasa. Starting with obedience, that is how it says, obedience to the Lord's will, being dharmic. The entire Shastras, the secondary Shastras, do's and don'ts of Dharma are all based on this. How to make man less selfish, and how to make him understand that he is not a separate self. He is part of God, part and parcel of God. And he is part and parcel of God's pleasure. When he is part and parcel of God, Prabhupada gives always this beautiful example of how the finger is part and parcel of this body, and this finger is also part and parcel of the pleasure of the body, because he is getting pleasure, or is getting nourished at least here. In the spiritual Satchidananda body, it gets pleasure. Sometimes part gets more pleasure than the whole. Prabhupada explains. And Purusha and Prakriti, they enjoy. Sometimes Prakriti gets more pleasure than Purusha. That is in the Satchidananda. Here, even we can understand in terms of nourishment, this body, material body. See, the finger is a part of this body, and the finger serves the whole body, and the whole body nourishes the fingers. So this nourishment, here it is blood, oxygen, all these kind of things. You just take in Satchidananda body, it is Sat, Chit and Ananda nourishment. That nourishment is coming when we actually serve the Supreme Satchidananda. Prabhupada said, therefore he is Satchidananda, form of bliss, knowledge and eternity. So Vaishnava philosophy is not against Ananda, not against knowledge, not against eternal existence, not against individuality, not against, like Prabhupada says yesterday, not against all these things. It is about Krishna being the center. It is about serving Krishna's pleasure. All these variegatedness are existing in the spiritual world also. And these variegatedness are meant for enjoying together. In the spiritual world, in the material world, I enjoy, you don't enjoy. If I enjoy, you don't enjoy. In the spiritual world, everybody is giving enjoyment to Krishna. When Krishna enjoys, enjoyment goes everywhere. Just like you pour water in the root of a tree, the water goes to the entire. It's a very big principle. It's a unfailing principle. You do yajna, you please Vishnu, the entire universe is getting the effect of it. You chant Hare Krishna here, the effect is not only for you, because you are part of this universe. When you are vibrating Hare Krishna Mahamantra, you are contributing to the peace of the world, because you are pleasing Krishna. So selfish pleasure is localized pleasure. Devotion service pleasure is universal. It spreads to everybody. Your devotion service spreads to everybody also. Every tiny, just like this finger serves this body, the finger's service is enjoyed by the total body. Benefit of this finger service goes to the total body. In the total existence of Krishna and Krishna's energies. So how harmoniously the entire existence moves towards Anandamaya Abhyasa. That is the principle of existence. Even this material energy, 1/4 of the existence that is there, one material energy is created. It is again according to Lord's Leela. He creates these Vibhinamshas, these small living entities, tiny living entities, brings them forth into this material world, gives them freedom. And constitutionally, by that freedom, they are not the masters of the material energy. They are tiny. So they learn that I am created with constitutional need for Sat, Chit and Ananda. pure Satchit Ananda. I am created like that. We come forth from Brahman, unlimited living entities. We are created like that. Then afterwards in the material energy, when we are mixing with the material energy, we see there is always a deficit of Sat, Chit and Ananda. Nobody is satisfied. That is when Athato Brahma Jijnasa, living entity, questions. That is when, according to Lord's scheme of this creation, this is his cobweb. He sends acharyas, he sends guru, sadhu, shastra. They are all there in the middle of the material world, in the midst of the material world, where the living entities are brought by Paramatma. Krishna brings one to the spiritual master. Then one hears about this. Then he exercises free will for exclusive love of Krishna, not for selfish pleasure, not for karma, but for devotional service. Then his journey begins. These are all leelas of the total leelas of the Lord. The Lord has designed this material world in such a way to distill pure devotees out of this material existence. And pure devotees, it is not a mechanical distillation. They have to be distilled out of pure free will. Which living entities want to exercise their free will and give up localized selfish pleasure and seek pleasure for the Lord? Who wants to get attracted to this unlimited personality, Vishnu Tattva? They get the opportunity to distill and evaporate and go into the spiritual world. So ultimately it is inconceivable how big, how large, how extensive this creation is inconceivable. That is not easy nowadays for us to understand. Nowadays, very easily we can understand this, but 100 years back, probably we could not have understood this. We see all the stars, we'll be saying maybe somewhere some end is there, some little more. Some instrument is there, we can see, we can ultimately count the number of stars. But today, in the last 100 years, it is found out that goes on and on and on and on and on. They said solar system is one of the stars in Milky Way galaxy. Milky Way galaxy contains 1 billion suns. How many? 1 billion suns. Out of that, one sun is our sun. And then, after another 20 years, they went behind and they further found out there are 1 billion, in numbers, billions of galaxies. And they say Milky Way is the smallest galaxy. So where is all this going to end? They are bewildered. The universe is, not only that, the universe is continuously expanding. Why it is expanding, they do not know. Suppose on the globe, on a balloon, you have 2 dots. You blow the balloon, what happens? Distance between the 2 dots goes on increasing, no? In the same way, they have discovered that every global body is moving apart from each other. That means everything is on the surface of a globe or what? They have no idea. That means sometimes they were all in one point and they opened up and they are moving apart radially from one point. That's why they say this Big Bang theory. From one point it exploded and everything is going from that point radiating out. When they radiate out, they all seem to be moving away from each other. This is today's scientific fact. And they do all the, now instruments are all, become absolute, how far they can go. Now they do everything in mathematics. There is no point in it. The light that you see from the star, that is the light that has emanated from there. It takes so many light years to reach you. So you are never seeing the now. You are thinking that, okay, today I am seeing, the today star is there. Today's star is not there. What you are seeing is the star that was there billions of light years away. Whether the star exists today, at this point, whether that star exists, you do not know. Because that light came there, left that place, light years away. So there's no point in trying to, see with the telescope all these things. Now they're restricted to mathematics. In paper they work out. If there was a big bang, if this is a mass, this is a calculation, and then the mass, the velocity, the force, how far it can go when that force becomes zero, then they say the universe will come back, will fall back into itself. This is the same. There is some principle operating here. Krishna also brings forth this entire existence, and then he pulls back his entire existence into him. If not for all these modern things, if you simply see these things, you'll simply think, where is all this universe is, it comes forth and then it goes back inside. And now in the material universe, our science has got evidence of an expanding universe. And yesterday we were discussing about time. Time also, they are completely bewildered about time now, scientists. Time is part and parcel, it's a fabric of objective world. Otherwise, length, breadth, height, 3 dimensions, spatial dimensions. They say, okay, that is objective world. Now they see that time is an objective world on par with space. Just like if I have X, Y, Z. Suppose I move a car along the X-axis, 100 meters. And along the X-axis, then I don't move anywhere in the Y-axis. Suppose I move in Y-axis 10 units and rest here. That means diagonally I drive. Then you are moving, your motion, though you are moving like before, but now you in one direction you are moving less, in another direction you are moving. In both directions you cannot say, if I go diagonally, I cannot say I have moved 100 here and 100 here. No. So they are related. X and Y is related. If you change your direction, part of the direction goes here, part of the velocity goes here, this goes here. They have found out between space and time, the similar equation is there. Space and time, similar equation is there. That means it is another dimension. Nowadays, the world is not spoken of as space. World is spoken of as space-time. Why? Because at the relativity, special relativity, Einstein, in that there is a thing that a very innovative, very unique discovery he made. Speed of light is fixed in every frame of reference. Suppose I take a ball and I run with the ball. My velocity is 10 kilometers per hour. And I throw the ball at, say, 30 kilometers per hour. So the ball will move at 40 kilometers per hour. Suppose you had a photon. I run with 10 kilometers and I throw the photon at 30 kilometers per hour. It will always remain 30. You're running at 10 or running at 20 or running at. Which means the velocity has to remain same, then the two factors that decide the velocity, distance and time, they are changing. The fabric of space is changing when light moves. Time is an objective factor. So time moves, they see the time is moving forward, but they don't understand why, because their equation is all symmetric. If a t could also be minus, that means, technically speaking, today physics says that you can reverse everything back. That means, we are born and then we die. So if you reverse it, we get up from the dead, and then when you are born, you disappear from this world. So these are all very much predicted by physics as per the equation, as per mathematical equations. Of course, all these things will have, Newton had one idea of motion. Newton thought this world, space is a fixed, rigid thing. Suddenly Einstein found out, no, space in which all this motion is happening is not rigid. It is having its own forces. Newton simply found out the gravitational thing that, okay, G_mm by r squared, that whole gravitational between the planets, how it works, distance between them, all those things he figured out. He called it as gravitational force. He did not know what is that force. There is a big mystery for a long time. In a magnetic force, you can see in between some magnetic field is there. In gravitational force, nobody could catch there is any field there, but still there is a force. What is this gravitational force? There is no field in between. That is when Einstein discovered that space and time space is creating gravitational force. That means the curvature of the space is creating gravitational force. Suppose you have a flat rubber sheet, and in the rubber sheet you put one weight. You put the sun there in the center, Surya, that's a weight. What will happen? It will depress, no? So Einstein said that this is what is happening. When it depresses, what happens? Surrounding, what happens? There is an orbit created. So that space, curvature in the space is what is moving Earth and other planets. Not something that is emanating from the sun. Some force is coming from the sun and holding it. No. It is the nature of the space making the Earth go around. So space has become very meaningful. Space was nothing before Einstein, before Newton's time. Now space. Now they have got so many paradoxes. Paradoxes means, they cannot explain many things. When you cannot explain many things, it simply means that again the understanding is not complete. You will see many more wonderful things will be discovered with time. This is not the end of it. When Einstein gave all these things, everybody thought this is the end of it. Nicely, we know any body moves, everything motion. We understood the motion of the planets. We understood how to send a rocket. We thought everything we knew. And then when Einstein discovered this, oh no, now more things are coming out. And so many paradoxes are there because they don't understand the full nature. So just see how bewildering this creation of the Lord is. It is not that anywhere near they have towards any understanding. Earlier, Galileo, Aristotle, they all started science as philosophers. We want to know what is the truth, what is behind this table, what is it. This is how they started. And this is how this philosophy and science were together. And then science said, no, we will stick to the objective thing, what we can verify, we see with our five senses. So philosophy got cut off from, understanding of truth. That became one branch and science became another branch. And then they went deeper and deeper into this. And they thought, yes, there is an objective reality. What is this? What is this? We want to find out. Oh, then they say, oh, this is made up of atoms. Now we understand. Fundamentally is atoms. Then further went, and finally they went, then they they thought space was static. So many things are in the state, let us find out what is it. Space itself is fluctuating. Space itself is alive. From space matter is coming. From space elementary particles are coming. Nobody can figure out. Particles are popping out and it is disappearing back into space. So we are not able to see. So many particles are coming and then it is going into the space. These are all verified. So I have today completely, that means you see, the last 100 years, the last 200 years, they thought we are understanding the world better. And the scientific, because of the technology also, science and scientific word developed so much of value among in this world. But now, among the top scientists also, many of them, they change their paradigm. They say that science is no longer studying truth. Science is studying reality, not truth. We don't care what it is because we are bewildered. It can go on and on and on. What is what? What is this? We are not answering anymore. We are not searching anymore. How does it work? That's all. Reality, how does it work? Enough. Because we are going on changing. Every Newton said this is what it is. This is what gravitational force is. Now that has changed. And then so many paradoxes are there. It can change again. So we need to understand all these things also. It's not that, we are sitting in some, with some understanding which is totally strange. Modern science is also, getting into all these unique, unbelievable things. Scientists could not believe all these things. When major revolution happens, they cannot believe. When Einstein said that, they could not believe. When Einstein's equation showed that a rod of 1 feet scale, if it goes at the speed of light, that 1 speed scale will become 6 inches. And speeder you go, it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. Nobody could believe that a clock in a moving vehicle will run slower than a clock in a stationary vehicle. Nobody could believe. And they verified it. They put one atomic clock in a flight, 2 times round the globe they went, and fine measured. You can actually see. When you come back and land, the clock that was in the flight is run less than the clock that was on the earth, static. Why? What is changing this? Time is dilating. That means time is an objective property. Otherwise, we always thought time is a way of seeing things. But time is actually a property there. Time is influencing there. Any questions? Grandharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada.